Hey everybody, it is Mike Schumann of the Daily Hoosier here for the East 17th Street podcast. And as you've likely heard, breaking news on Thursday evening, Mike Woodson expected to retire at the end of the 24-25 season. That's according to multiple reports that have come out over the course of the last few hours. Some carefully worded releases have come out, uh, indicating that they're going to try to give Woodson the respect of going out the right way. There's discussions going on about the coach's wishes to step away. Expected to coach the rest of the year, but unlikely to return next year, with details all being still discussed. So that's kind of where we are, and you can kind of tell, based on the way things are being worded, that this is a delicate situation. We're talking about a former star All American Big Ten champion basketball player at Indiana, a beloved figure as a player at IU, and somebody that people around Indiana really have a strong interest in treating the situation very delicately. But at the same time, this is a situation that's been kind of brewing for a while now, I would say. Going back to the Illinois game a few weeks ago, we did the podcast here on East 17th Street and talked about that 25-point home loss to Illinois and how that felt like the toothpaste out of the tube moment, if you will, for the Mike Woodson era. And I think the information coming out today, I won't call it a release because Indiana hasn't actually come out and said anything, but the wording that has come out certainly comes across as though it was crafted by Indiana or heavily influenced by Indiana and then released by national outlets. And that too is kind of a toothpaste out of the tube moment, if you will, because once this kind of news is out there, there's really no going back. So I think I said after the Illinois game, it was kind of a question of timing. It remains a question of timing, but I think we're now have a little bit more clarity on the fact that this is going to happen. All of the discussion to this point leads to coaching through the end of the season and retiring at the end of the season. But there's a lot of things that can play out at this point, and I think. Honestly, even though the Illinois game was that tipping point, it was really the first of the two back-to-back 25-point losses. There was a win at Ohio State, and then four more losses after that kind of just got us to this point where there's just no return. 6 of 7 losses, the last two on the road, and now Indiana's coming back for a home game against Michigan on Saturday. And I think, something else we alluded to here on the podcast recently was just, kind of a resistance to having an ugly scene in Assembly Hall generally. And especially the case with Michigan coming in. Everybody knows their head coach is Dusty May, an IU alumnus, somebody that, a lot of people, let's just be honest, have an interest in, at least giving a very careful look at him as being, one of the candidates for the next coach at Indiana. So there's a potential on Saturday for his presence and the, frustration with the Mike Woodson era kind of coming to a head. And so I think, this timing is not coincidental. I would have been really surprised if we had gotten all the way to Saturday without some sort of news like this. This kind of, in my opinion, should take a lot of tension out of the room, because everybody can now kind of, rest assured that something is going to happen, whether it's, near term or does go all the way through the end of the season, which by the way, is probably, not all that far off anyway, 4 6 weeks, whatever it ends up being, depending on how Indiana plays the rest of the season. But I think we're at a point now where it just made a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. And I think, Indiana losing 6 of 7 games, some good moments in there, some bad. They played really well at Mackey Arena, but found a way to lose. played a great second half against Maryland, found a way to lose, blown out at Wisconsin. It got to a point where, it's just you keep finding ways to lose, and I think you have your answer. And I think for the people that matter in this decision, AD Scott Dolson, President Pam Whitten, Board of Trustees, the key boosters that contribute the most money and influence these kind of decisions. I think there was enough consensus that there was a level of comfort to go ahead and get this done at this point in time. And I think it allows Indiana to get a little bit of a jump start in their coaching search. Obviously, anytime something like this gets to this point, there's already been a lot of due diligence that's been done. Uh, ahead of this point, conversations have been had internally. Certainly wouldn't be surprised if there's conversations that have gone on behind the scenes externally with agents and whatnot. But now it's out there. Now it's public, and the conversations could be had a little bit more in the open. They're not hypothetical, so real interest in this position can be gauged going forward. Because let's be honest, the way it was worded, it kind of leaves the door open, both on the timing. Is it going to be something that ultimately gets settled here in the next week, or is it go through all the way through to the end of the season or beyond? I don't think it matters, honestly. I think we're talking about a matter of weeks at this point, if not days, and it's the clarity of that is most important. That Indiana has let it be known that they have an opening. They can move forward in a little bit more public way, although much of it will take place behind the scenes. And with that being the case, they can really, start to move forward on who the next head coach of the IU basketball program is going to be. And like I said, I think for a fan base that was very frustrated with the direction of the program under Mike Woodson, and expressed that in a very clear and vocal way in that home game against Illinois, it allows them to kind of, take a step back, relax a little bit, understand that, whether it's this weekend or, in 4 to 6 weeks, they're going to have that clarity, and they can begin to be optimistic and look forward knowing that a new era of Indiana basketball is coming, which is always a very exciting time. Um, I honestly, the messaging has been that he's going to coach through the end of the season. That's always kind of what I expected. I've expected something to go down since that Illinois game, and I always kind of thought, they would mutually agree to some sort of wording that indicated there would be a retirement and coach out through the end of the season. I don't like the idea of an interim coach stepping in for a number of reasons. Probably not the least of which is if you have a Ohio State situation like last year where somebody comes in and does, a respectable job that creates a faction of people that want that guy to continue. And obviously there's some, beloved former players on the staff that could potentially step into that role. So that's a risk. But obviously, Mike Woodson's going to have a say in all of this as well. And he has to want to continue and coach this thing out as well. You also have the players to consider here, which is going to be an interesting element to this. We're in the ultimate era of player flexibility. A coaching change opens up the possibility that players can enter the transfer portal mid-season. I don't know that that's necessarily going to happen, but it could. And honestly, I don't know what if we have enough clarity on the situation right here at this moment on Thursday evening to know for sure if we officially have a coaching change that can allow players to enter the transfer portal. But it could, just kind of that's something to keep your eyes on, because I think there's a very real possibility that there could be roster fluctuation in the weeks to come. Because players want to get out ahead of things too, and they, if they don't like the direction things are going, they might want to go ahead and move on or consider. The players might want to go ahead and move on, or at least consider their options. So that's a very real possibility to consider as well, and something we'll have to keep a close eye on as things go down the road. You certainly feel for guys in this scenario like Anthony Leal, Trey Galloway, Luke Goody, guys that are in their final years of eligibility and have, in the former cases, spent their whole careers here and really wanted this season to be a special season. And in Luke Goody's case, is IU is a place he always wanted to play and came here to see this season be a special year. So in their cases, it's a tough situation. It's certainly not over. Indiana. The strangest thing about this is that they are in contention to make the NCAA tournament. A few quad one wins down the road here with plenty of home games amongst those quad one games can be enough to get them in the tournament. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on is, what happens with the players, how well they play is maybe this is a rallying cry. It's hard to know exactly with so many different, you've got guys that have, just come in this year like Miles Rice and Kanan Carlisle, Umar Ballo. You don't know how something like this affects them either. So just a lot of different things to keep an eye on right now. But I as I take a step back and consider the Mike Woodson era, this year was his year. He got this fourth year. He got a major investment from boosters to build the roster that he wanted to build. But even with that, this the way the team's been playing lately doesn't look a lot different, irrespective of it being his most talented roster, as he has said on multiple occasions going into the season that this was his most talented roster. He was given the opportunity, he was given the money, he had the talent, and it's just not been something that he's ever been able to win at a consistent level. And high school recruiting has dropped off substantially to the point where they made some major misses on the class of 2025, and have really relied on the transfer portal and late decommits and things of that nature. The staff just really didn't have a lot of success down in the latter years of landing high school commits, and then the on court product as well. It's just there's never been a consistent, high level caliber of play on the court. There's been 10-minute spurts here and there, but it's hard to really pin an identity on Mike Woodson and the brand of basketball that they've been playing. So I think for all those reasons, it's all kind of come to a head with where we are now. Um, People want to know about his buyout. I don't ever think that was a major factor in getting to this point. He's got 2 years left on his deal of around 4.2 million per year. So he is owed that money by Indiana if he's let go. I don't know if he actually chooses to retire if he's owed it, but I think what's probably going to happen here is that both sides are just kind of work out a settlement and move on. As the contract language stipulates at the moment, if he were to be terminated, he'd be owed that 4.2 million times two, so 8.4 million over uh, the span of $1 million per year, so a little over 8 years. But I wouldn't be surprised if that gets handled a little bit differently in kind of a final agreement that still needs to be worked out as things stand at the moment. Um, that I think the Michigan game on Saturday will probably go a little bit differently now that this news is out there. I think, like I said earlier, I think Indiana fans can probably relax, know what's coming. Maybe even some folks will decide that it would be nice to see Mike Woodson go out on a high note. I don't know how they'll handle Dusty May being there on Saturday now. I think most fans will probably root for Indiana to win and be fairly positive, but you never know. But I do think that this news is coming before that game for at least in part, at least the timing part for that reason. I think it should help the environment on Saturday be a lot more positive. And just thinking about candidates to replace Mike Woodson, obviously we'll have a lot of coverage on that in the days and weeks to come. I think Indiana is a very attractive program right now for any top candidate in the nation. Really, you think about things like NIL, the Indiana brand, the base of high school recruiting, a large fan base, playing in the Big Ten, and what that includes from a revenue standpoint, television, geographic footprint, everything, and probably more importantly than anything else, Indiana is going to pay for this position. So it's going to be one of the top paying jobs in the nation. So I think for all those reasons, Indiana's going to have a lot of interest in this job. I think they'll start in the obvious places. Talking to guys like Brad Stevens and Billy Donovan, Jay Wright, you name them, all the guys that that you have to make the call, but you don't necessarily expect it to go anywhere. But I suspect that's where things will start if they haven't started already. And in the next few hours, if not tomorrow, we'll put out. I've already got it drafted, a kind of a big board or a directory, kind of like the if I were Scott Dolson, every name I would have on my list as a potential candidate from those big names I mentioned all the way down to some mid-major guys that could be attractive. So I think that'll be our starting point from a board perspective, and then we'll go out to maybe putting more realistic names out there in tiers like tier one, tier two, tier three of who I think is really going to be considered for this job. I've kind of got my thoughts on who Indiana is really going to take a really hard look at, assuming those top names are not interested, and we'll have that information in the days to come. So I think that's it for now. Just wanted to touch base on the big news of the day, and obviously stay tuned to the Daily Hoosier in the days to come for more on this breaking development. I am Mike Schumann, and this is East 17th Street.